Hi, and welcome. It's one of those days where all kinds of things that could possibly go wrong have gone wrong. So it is that time, I think. So I wanted to start with welcome if you're live or if you're watching us on the replay. And it turns out that I'm not broadcasting the places that I thought I was, which is why I'm kind of checking around my screens. And sometimes life just kind of happens. So we're just going to roll with it. And I have two really awesome speakers that I can't wait to share with you. So let's start with, my name is Robin Forster, and this program is called Feel So Alive, and it's all about being informed. And our two different speakers, we do this twice a month usually. In August, that didn't work. August was just the month that was, like 2020. Hopefully someday soon will be the year that was. The reason I started doing this, there was a couple of them. One is my mentor, Jasmine Starr, said, go do a Facebook Live. And I went, okay, I'm a little scared to do that, but sure, why not? So I did and found out it was kind of fun and then started playing with it. And then COVID hit. And we're not going to talk about that because we all already know about that and we're living it. But what happened was I realized that there was a lot of information that small businesses and just normal people needed that it was really hard to find. And so I have been talking to friends and having them come on and do a 10-minute little interview. The first person I have on usually is a healer. And the second person I have on is a business person. Not that healers aren't, but I was trying to figure out how to separate it from the day-to-day doing and functioning, and also the healing, which is the self-care, which we all need a lot of. So I will be looking down at my notes, and this could be a little crazy today, so just kind of bear with me. Some of our words this month, this year, are grace, and compassion, and patience. So let's see if we can make some of this work, because after taking some time off from this, computer issues, this is my first time back. So we'll see if we can get this to work or not. And thank you very much for your patience. And our first speaker. Hi, and welcome. I'm Robin Forster with Feel So Alive and Feel So Alive Informed. And my guest today is Marina Orms, and this is going to be really fascinating. Marina, say hi to everyone.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Oh, good. Well, I'm so glad that you're here, because when I heard about you being a retired holistic nurse and very much into astrology, and I will let you explain that because I'm still learning, I was just fascinated as a healer, the things that you can do to help us. So my first question to you to get us started. Oh, and I'll be looking down now and then at my questions because I want to make sure I remember all of them, because this is going to be very fun. Okay, so the first question is, if you could tell us and our listeners a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so to keep it short, I guess, basically I grew up in a household that was very scientific, and my father's an astrophysicist, and so I always had a very scientific, logical way of thinking about the world, but I also always felt like there was something missing, and so I was kind of looking and seeking for some bigger picture thing that would resonate and help me understand some of these things that we don't have words for, that we don't explain. And so in my mid-20s, I discovered I was going to actually it was an herbal medicine school, and there was an astrologer there who taught classes, and that was really the first I had ever heard of somebody having a class in astrology. Like, I just thought it was the little thing that you read in the newspaper. And so I took the class because I was like, well, I wanted to understand what it was. And I had no idea. I had no idea, like, the depth and the wealth and the richness of the information that was available. And so it opened the door, and it opened my eyes to what was possible. And as I continued on my own journey of learning, I just kept coming back to, I've always been interested in healing. I've always been interested in like, what is this bigger picture of what makes us tick? And I've always come back to how that translates into astrology, because it gives us this beautiful language for what we're experiencing.
Okay, but now how did the nurse part? I mean, I understand
Yeah.
the science of the nurse part given your background, but where did that come from?
Well, I've always been trying to reconcile inside of myself like this very practical, logical approach to healing and wanting to be involved in the world and make a difference for people. But the fact that I also needed this deeper, like outside the box, way of understanding that was really more comprehensive and gave us, again, more words to describe what we're experiencing. Um, and so I became a nurse actually because I was fascinated with birth and birthing women. And so I was a doula for many years, and then I became a labor and delivery nurse. But my path has always been holistic. So I've always kind of had these parallel truths, sometimes more one or the other, but now, in recent years and with my business, Astrology Heals, they have really come together in a beautiful way.
Interesting. Huh. I didn't realize that you'd been a doula. I attended a friend's home birth and it was just, yeah, you're smiling. Yeah, because
Yeah,
incredible.
yeah.
And it was, her like third child, so no scary issues at all. And she
Mm.
waited for her older son to get home from school before she delivered the baby. I mean, you know how moms do that,
Yes.
and the when you say looking for the words to explain more, it just seems like being in the presence of a birth. You're really looking for the rest of the words because there's just so much more.
It's so powerful, and birth is such a metaphor for our own experience. It's like when we're healing, we want to birth a new self. We want to have that transition, that transformation, and birth is a transformation in every way possible, as is death. It's like these mini deaths and rebirths that we have in our lives and ourselves as we go throughout life. So astrology helps us to understand and describe that.
Interesting. Okay, so can you give us some examples of how astrology helps to understand?
Yeah, well, as I was sharing with you, there are many ways you can use astrology, and it's very involved. There's so much to learn and study, and the beautiful thing is that you don't have to. You can study it for your entire life, but you don't have to study it very long to start getting benefits from it. And so, one obvious way people know about using astrology is to have a reading of your natal chart. And so, your natal chart is simply a map of where the planets were in the sky at the moment you were born. You can also, that's going to be specific to a person and their own birth chart. You can also follow astrology and what's going on currently in the sky. And so, for example, in 2020, we have a triple conjunction of outer planets, and some people might have heard of that. So that's true in the sky right now, and it's happening. It's an energetic that we're experiencing in the collective for everyone. So it helps us understand some of the things we're going through right now: global pandemic, authoritarian leaders, change in our systems, breakdown in our system structures and institutions. These are just some examples of the kinds of things that we see in the astrological symbolism.
Interesting, and I'm so glad that you kind of explained that a little bit more because I have no idea. But the energy part, yeah, the energy has been wonky, and it's interesting how the energy kind of does a wonkiness this way. You
Yeah.
know,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, is that what you're seeing and feeling too?
Well, the thing about, astrology to me, what's so powerful about it is that it helps us think beyond a linear way of thinking. So it helps us think in circles. It helps us think in three dimensions. I can't quite, cover all of that here today, but But one of the things it does is that everything that is a planet or a sign or your own sun sign in astrology has a range of possibilities. So it can be expressed in a more negative way, it can be expressed in a more positive way. And that's where the healing comes in, is that we have choices to make along that spectrum. And so same thing with the energies in the sky, which is kind of how I was interpreting your question, is that we can work with it in a conscious and positive way, or we can kind of fight against it and have it work, in a more negative way.
Okay, well, speaking of all that,
Yeah.
that's a nice segue into what are the gifts, what are the things, the tips that we can do, not being astrologers, to kind of help us deal with healing and as strange as the world is right now.
Yeah. Well, one of the simplest, most approachable ways to use astrology in your daily life is to start following the moon signs.
Okay.
And so the moon, just like the sun goes through 12 signs of the zodiac throughout the year, which is why, depending on the month you were born, you'll have a different zodiac sign. The moon also goes through all the zodiac signs, but it moves more quickly. So it goes through a sign in 2 to 2.5 days. It spends in one sign. So when you know the sign that the moon is in, you know the mood or the feeling of each day. And so we have signs that are earth signs, air signs, fire signs, water signs. So even just knowing the element, if you know it's for the day that the moon is in a water sign, then there's a more of an emotional component to the day. Things are a little more intangible, a little more flowing. Sometimes you just need to feel, and so when you know that's what's going on that day, it helps you kind of relax and just, let it be what it is instead of
So
fighting against it.
is that what's on your calendar?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
Okay.
on my website at astrologyheals.com, if you sign up, you can get this moon planning calendar. Now, one of the things about, a lot of times if you look up astrology calendars, they're all in this weird symbolic language that you don't know unless you're an astrologer. So what I've tried to do with my moon planning calendar is put it all in English so the layperson can understand. And there's also a description of what each of the signs, how that might show up in the qualities or the mood of each day. So you can find the calendar for each month. I post the new one each month so that you can follow that as we
Oh,
go.
neat. And that's what I printed out. And I know y'all can't see this, but go to the website and print and download your own. And we are out of time, and I know that you have other things that you have to do, and I appreciate you giving us this time. Was there any other one quick little 10-second tip that you wanted to share, or do you? Because you're right, we can't cover all of astrology in
Right.
less than 10 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah, just to know that there really is a bigger picture that's going to help you understand what's happening and why, and kind of the context. And so if you start to follow some of the astrology, you will start to understand what that's all about.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. This has just been, you've answered so many questions I didn't know that I had.
Ah,
So
good.
yeah, that's really
That's my
helpful.
job.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Wasn't that fascinating? I really was enjoying listening to her again. And don't forget to go to her website. I haven't done that this month, and I really need to do that. And next, a little something to kind of help us all make it through the day. Oops, let me move that one banner out of the way. Sorry about that. I know that we all have what I'm calling sucky moments, just for lack of a better term. And so I put together this little post so that we could remember what to do when we get into one of those sucky moments. Because don't you find that when you're in it, sometimes it's hard to get out of it? And so that's what this is about. So the first one, this is BFL. First one is body, so movement. Stand up if you're sitting, and so many of us are sitting way too much. It's not good for us, so this is a really good excuse. Also, this great little exercise that I can't do for you now, but it's reach to the sky. So basically, you kind of lean over and then come back up, and you're reaching for the sky, and do that 3 or 4 times, because that really helps to kind of get everything moving again. And we want to think about our fascia, which we're sitting on. It's underneath our skin, and we need to keep it hydrated. So sipping water is good. Walking an animal if you have one, or petting one is a good thing. And then the second one, the F in BFL, is focus. So change what you're focusing on. Think of things that you're grateful for. Because when we go to appreciation or the silver lining or having gratitude for the day, even though life sucks, and right now in Oregon we have fires going on and it's COVID, and there's just a whole lot of not very fun things going on. People have lost their homes, their businesses, but we still need to look for that little piece of gratitude. Maybe it's that you're with your family, or you have your health, or you were able to wake up this morning. Whatever it is, maybe it's just a memory of a vacation that you really appreciated. You were grateful for the folks who were there with you. Anything. It can be little teeny, doesn't make any difference. But if you can think of 3 of those, that's really awesome. It'll really help your mood and your energy. And then language. How are we talking to ourselves? It is so easy for us to get into negative self-talk, and I was so dumb I did that, and what a stupid thing to do, and I should know better. That's not helpful. So why don't we give ourselves a break right now? I'm thinking about giving ourselves grace and giving ourselves compassion. So why don't we tell ourselves instead, you're doing the best you can. That's awesome. Or I'm glad that you tried that. Looking at flipping our mindset. So let's switch on over to our next speaker. And Tom is a lot of fun. He'll tell you about himself. It's pretty neat. Hi, I'm Robin Forster with Feel So Alive and Feel So Alive Informed. And this program is all about giving you, the small business person, some information that you may not have known that you needed, but you're really going to be glad that you get it. And my guest today, and I want to let you know I'm going to be looking down at my notes because I have some questions that I want to make sure that I ask Tom, because he's got an incredible amount of information. So if I'm looking down, that's what's going on. And Tom, if you would say hi to everyone.
Hello, everyone.
Excellent.
Good to be here.
Good. Well, we're glad to have you, and those folks who are coming on live or are looking at the replay. Tom, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself? Just take a few minutes to kind of give folks a sense of who you are, because they don't know you, and I do.
Okay. Well, I've known Robin for some time, and she knows my wife and I, and I'm been married for 32 years, have 2 grown children, and they both live down in Medford. And my wife and I have 3 Liberty tax offices in the Springfield and Eugene area. And we just finished our 11th tax season. So we've been doing this for a while. And I graduated from college in 1989 with a degree in accounting, and used it in other lines of work, doing a little bit of taxes on the side, but really until having my own business 11 years ago, that's when we really jumped into it and have been doing it full time since. So.
Excellent. And for me, it always is amazing that people like numbers and really kind of get them, because I am not a numbers person. So what was it about accounting, numbers? I mean, how did you go, out of all the things you could have been as you were growing up and going to college, how was it that this is what your passion turned out to be?
It's interesting because I have this conversation quite a bit with many of my clients. They'll come in and they'll apologize to me for not knowing something that they're asking me to do for them. And I'll let them know, if they're a mechanic, that's why I come to you, to change my oil, to put my brakes on. That's your gift. My gift is numbers. I think back, even way back when I was a little kid, I used to take a ruler and a pen, or a pencil at that time probably, and I would make out little forms and I'd fill them in with numbers, just kind of a little geek as a young child. And I just really enjoy it. It's like putting together a piece of a puzzle, especially on a business return where you're trying to balance the profit and loss statement and the tax return. to a balance sheet, and you just kind of get all those little pieces of the pie put together, and it's kind of exciting, like putting that last 2 or 3 pieces of a puzzle together, and you kind of know you're about to wrap it up, and I just like what I do. Yeah. So.
Well, and we're glad.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And I'm glad mechanics like what they do. I'm glad that my builder likes what he does and all that kind of good stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So why buy like a franchise? I mean, Liberty is a franchise kind of thing,
Yes.
right? And why that out of all the choices in the world?
That's a good question, and it's been really good to us. I guess it's kind of like we were looking into going into a business, and part of looking into a business is to not only do something that you love to do, but do it well and hopefully make some good money at it. And one of the benefits to buying a franchise is you get this name that people recognize, and it can make a big difference. It's kind of like you might make a really good hamburger and open a hamburger stand across from McDonald's, but if you have the money to get into a McDonald's franchise, the day you open, people know McDonald's, and that kind of can be the deal with the franchise too. Obviously McDonald's is a lot bigger than Liberty Tax, but it's real similar in that regard, that has this brand recognition that people know and trust, and can really be of a big benefit to grow on that. So.
Oh, yeah, that makes a lot of sense, the branding, and it can be pretty expensive to do your own branding and
Yep.
promote it. Yeah, exactly. Huh. Okay. And tell us a little bit about the gifts and the tips that you have for us small business owners. This is after the tax filing, so we don't have that pressure right now. But
Right.
some of us, as I was sharing with you before, had to file an extension again.
Right.
So,
Yeah, a lot of people file extensions, and some of that could be avoided if people did a better job of keeping up on their books. And when I say that, I never say that to chastise people, but one of the things that I see when I look at different businesses and see the different ones that are very successful from the ones that tend to struggle along is a decent set of books. People who know where they're at financially at any given time, use those tools that they have to prepare budgets and forecast and plan, as well as look at history and know where they're spending money and know how to analyze it and determine if something's cost effective. If they're wasting money in a certain area, those can be tools that a lot of times people don't realize, that a good set of books really gives you the opportunity to make those determinations. If you wait till you file your tax return and then you've got this once a year snapshot, all of a sudden, how much money did I make? How much money did I not make? You might run into a lot of issues, including a big tax bill that you weren't prepared for, or maybe, not enough profit. You didn't even realize you weren't making money in certain areas. So there's a lot of things that can be done with having somebody doing a good set of books. Frequently, I'll advise people to hire a bookkeeper. I have many of my clients that have grown their businesses from little businesses into big businesses by hiring a bookkeeper and planning ahead and not doing things. I'll give you an example. I've got contractors who do different jobs, whether it's landscaping, fence building, building houses, or whatever it is. If they're spending an entire weekend doing books, something they're not really very good at, they could actually be out bidding a job or getting a job in just a fraction of the time and pay for my expense to pay me to do their bookkeeping and do it well. We're good at what we do, and that can make a big difference.
interesting. Yeah, I'm just applying this to my own poor
Right.
bookkeeping systems. I'm just
Feel a little
going,
guilt there, Rob? No, I'm kidding.
oh,
Yeah,
there's
so.
guilt, there's shame, there's all of those things that I think most of us have.
Well, and I think, it's kind of like the mechanic. A lot of times everybody else's car's running really, really well, and theirs might get put on the back burner. And I think as business owners, we tend to fall into that. It's why I pay somebody to do my books for me, because I would put them off and I would be that very same person come tax time. But instead, I've got the tools put in front of me on a regular basis to know how well I'm doing, as well as to put together those budget forecasts that we're talking about. So. good
That's
tools.
really nice to hear that as a business professional, you have figured out where the friction was in your business, and so you've delegated that so
Yep.
you make sure that it gets done.
Yeah.
That is just brilliant. Yeah, wow. So are there any software programs, any, online, there's all kinds of stuff. Do you recommend any or suggest not to use any, or what are your thoughts on that whole world?
That's another interesting question because, QuickBooks is really good. Um, and and people say, that it's really easy to do in QuickBooks. Well, I see more bad books than I do good books. And I compare it to tax software for self-prepared tax returns. If somebody doesn't have a good feel for what their end results should look like, they're in dangerous territory. We correct a lot of tax returns and we correct a lot of books in order to put together a good final tax return. Um, QuickBooks is a good tool, but if somebody's a good artist or a good mechanic or a good builder, or like you're really great at marketing and informing people, about Feel So Alive and stuff like that. And those person, they may not be a great bookkeeper. And if it's not their forte, it could be really dangerous for them to be in QuickBooks. I see a lot of things that happen where people have duplicated invoices, duplicated expenses, and it's not because they're stupid, and it's not because they just they don't know, and they don't know what they don't know, and they're actually putting in an invoice and it all looks really good and it prints out pretty, but when you go to look at the profit loss statement, there's just a lot of things in the wrong locations and some duplications and some real dangerous outcomes that can come that way. um, if somebody is going to use QuickBooks, I recommend hiring a bookkeeper if if their budget allows it, and sometimes you have to force the budget to allow it and it'll take care of itself because you can do more of taking care of your business, which is what we as business owners should be doing. And or hiring somebody to teach them how to do QuickBooks that really knows what they're doing and knows the difference between where things should go on a balance sheet compared to a profit loss statement. So
Okay.
so I don't want to pick on those programs because it's kind of one of those things, garbage in, garbage out. And I think it's really important to know what you're doing. For some people, if they're not very good at doing that, QuickBooks or something like that, an Excel spreadsheet, just keeping good track on something can be really simple and sometimes a better alternative for some people.
Interesting. QuickBooks and I are frenemies.
Yeah, there we go. Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I'm watching the time, and I appreciate you being kind enough to give us this time and your expertise. And do
Yeah.
you have one or two quick tips that you haven't already shared with us?
One of the things, I guess probably one of the big tip that I share with people, and I got another phone call today from a friend of mine who they own a business, and they're asking for ways to lower their taxes. And
Sure.
one of them is they want to, come up with some expenses that will help them offset their income. And I think a lot of people focus sometimes on spending money to save money on their taxes and should be really careful of that. If you can spend money and it's going to help you make money or spend more time with your family or do your job better and it makes sense, that could be a good investment. But if you're spending money solely to not pay the IRS more money, you're probably spending money that you don't even realize you're wasting in order to save a few dollars. And I compare it to going to the shopping mall and getting a great sale on something. You can't show me the money you saved. Money just left your pocketbook or your wallet. And that can be the case with trying to save money with the IRS. Sometimes maybe we can't show the money we saved and need to really think about those expenses. So,
That's a good point because I've heard people talk about that before. But Tom, I'm keeping an eye on the clock, and thank
okay,
you so much. I
you're welcome.
appreciate.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, this has been very fun. So far from our two speakers, Marina has been talking about using astrology and understanding. Her example was great about if you know that it's a water day, that things are going to flow a little differently, then you might want to look at how you're going to do the day and maybe let things just kind of be. Let it be okay. And Tom was talking about, I mean, a lot of great tips, But two of them I really liked was to delegate whatever it is that's giving you friction. And in my life, it's bookkeeping, which is part of why I wanted him to come and share with us. And the other thing is that bookkeeping is really a tool, and I had never thought of it that way. I always thought of it as something that I had to do that I would put off as long as possible, which is, as we know now, not the best plan for a small business. But I thought it was really interesting to relate it to a tool and the amount of information it can help us as we move along with our businesses. So to get ready to end, and thank you for those of you who are watching us live, and thank you for those of us who are watching us on the replay. We appreciate your time. And wanted to let you know, if you want to see us again, you can go subscribe. Oops, sorry about that being in the way. You can subscribe on our YouTube channel. We are now back onto our regular schedule of the second and fourth Thursdays every month at 1 p.m. and that is Pacific time. Like our Facebook page, and which is Feel So Alive, and it's MKGP because it's an abbreviation for marketing group, because who wants to type that all out? So that's what I went with, the MKGP. Also, if you have some questions, feel free to reach out to me either on Instagram or on Facebook, and or email me at robin@feelsoalive.biz. And thank you for joining us today.